Hello, everybody, and welcome into my latest live broadcast. It's Friday, the 29th of March, 2024. My name is Kerry Holzman, and thank you guys so much for hanging out. This is not the show I had wanted to do today. The show that I had planned was to showcase the different motherboard manufacturers, the four big guys, ASRock, MSI, Asus, and Gigabyte, to show you how they're overvolting Intel chips by default, whether you've got a Z-based board, a K-based board, a regular Intel chip, or a K version of an Intel chip. Regardless, across the board, they are all overvolting them, causing them to run hotter, reducing their overall lifespan, creating issues for users that think they need to buy better coolers, which in some cases does help the problem. But if you just lower the voltage back to Intel's recommendations, in many cases, you don't need to do any repairs. You don't have to buy any better coolers. And your efficiency goes up, meaning the chip runs cooler, longer, more reliably, and costs less money in electricity for what you get in return. Yes, we can throw more power at it. We can throw 10 times more power to get 1 times more speed out of it. So there's this point where you put in 10 and you get out 8 or 9, and then you put in 20 and you get out 9 or 10. In other words, you're putting in a bunch of power, and in return for that power, you're getting back performance, but you're also generating more heat. And this idea that performance is always better is a very short-sighted, mindless behavior from people who don't understand the depth of the computer. They have a very simple mind, and all they think of is faster is better. They don't think about the cost to the ecology, the wear and tear on the chip, the reliability of the chip, and they obviously just don't care. And that's fine if you're in that position, but I'm afraid most of us are not in that position. Most of us do care, and we assume there's something wrong. And those differences that you get by throwing a ton more power to get a little ounce of performance back would be unnoticeable by most ordinary human beings. It's only those that are special that notice that, or have very special needs, which does not represent the majority of us. And unfortunately, the content here on YouTube is primarily made by the special ones, not by the regular folks. So that's what I'm trying to do, is to offer viewers who don't consider themselves in that league, to offer them another league that represents the majority of computer owners on the planet. That's us, regular folks looking for practical solutions, not trying to set world records with bottomless money pits of time and currency to just throw into a project just so it can run for 5 minutes at a new world record while completely self-destructing. There are people who do that and they enjoy doing it, and all the power to them. I have nothing against what they're doing, other than it can mislead viewers who don't understand what they're watching to think that's normal or something that they should be pursuing. Now, whether or not you should pursue that is a personal decision, but it does involve how much time and money you have and how quickly you want to burn through all of it, because you will not get any money in return for that unless you're able to establish some sort of a tournament league where you pay an entrance fee and perhaps there's a prize at the end. But otherwise, for the rest of us, today's modern CPUs are so fast. It seems ridiculous to me to try and get it, a couple megahertz faster when it's a drop in a bucket of, it's already overflowing. So like, how much is enough? So when I was prepping these boards to get ready to show you how each manufacturer, universally, they all overvolt CPUs. They don't give you a choice. When you put your system together out of the box, and it's a 12th, 13th, or 14th gen Intel, or even a modern Ryzen processor, it's being overvolted without your consent, without your permission, and it is not easy to put it back to the Intel engineers' recommended specifications regarding minimum and maximum wattage. So there's a ton of videos out there that say, well, you can do this and you can do that, and you can undervolt the CPU, and you can put a better cooler on, and you can buy more expensive this, and you can buy more expensive that. But you don't have to do any of that. If you would just follow Intel specifications, probably everything is fine. So you'd think that would be the default that these motherboards would do. And for the technically abled, they would feel comfortable going into the BIOS to turn on those enhancements to overvolt the chip and get that little tiny bit of boost. It's the other way around. The tiny bit of boost is on by default, whether you know it or you don't know it, doesn't matter. It is without your consent. It is without your knowledge in most cases. And to turn it off, you have to have a very technical mindset to understand how to get into a BIOS, what a BIOS is, where to look for the settings, and what the settings need to be, how to adjust them and restart it so that it will run the way Intel intended for it to run. I hope this is very temporary. I hope there is a class action lawsuit brought against all the motherboard manufacturers for what is causing a higher electric bill and lower reliability and killing off probably 80% of your CPU's lifespan by overvolting it on a regular basis. It takes a significant deep dip in how long it will last you. And these manufacturers need to stop. This needs to be something that has to be turned on with user consent, not the other way around. So while I was prepping, I got the Gigabyte board prepped up. The Gigabyte board I was able to buy refurbished from Amazon, and it's great. It's like brand new. The next board I did was Asus, and I didn't want to buy an Asus board because the last one I bought doesn't work. Sometimes it turns on and sometimes it doesn't. I've been meaning to send it in for an RMA, but I haven't gotten around to it. So I bought another Asus board reluctantly because Asus used to be the leader of the pack. Now they are the single worst board you can buy, in my opinion. I cannot recommend enough that you literally buy anything but Asus. They have fallen that far. Why do I say that? Well, lo and behold, a brand new, not open box, a brand new Asus board, the B760 Plus that I have right here. $99 on Amazon. That's cheap. It's almost too cheap. Well, lo and behold, it won't even let Windows 11 install on it. It just locks up during the install. So I've changed the RAM, I've changed the power supply, I've even changed the CPU, and I've changed the NVMe SSD. Something's wrong with this board. There's nothing left to change. And something that should have been a 2-hour job became a 2-day job, and I'm about ready to throw it into the trash can. I'm not going to. I'm going to return it to Amazon, where I bought it, and ask them to send me one more. If the replacement does the exact same thing, you will never see an Asus motherboard on this channel throughout 2024 or 2025 unless it's come in for repair. I will not buy one ever. I won't say ever. I will not buy one until management at Asus addresses the quality control issues that they have that they're not admitting to, that is costing me as a business owner way too much money. I haven't had a single problem with any of the ASRock boards I've used. The Gigabyte board fired right up like it should, and I have the MSI board, which in previous experience, MSI boards have been very good, but very expensive. Comparatively speaking, MSI is your most expensive board maker from my experience. Gigabyte seems to be a little wonky in their BIOS setup, and they won't communicate with me. No matter how many years I have tried to talk to Gigabyte, they will not talk back. And so I don't want to use their products anymore because I think they're arrogant and I think they're obstinate. They're going to do what they're going to do and they don't care. Asus, in my opinion, they claim they do nothing wrong and they're the leaders. That used to be true, but it doesn't appear to be true anymore. So I want nothing to do with them, and I prefer to have nothing to do with Gigabyte. And MSI, well, being good, they're just too expensive for my business unless something's on sale. That leaves me with ASRock. Yes, ASRock has become my new favorite board. I've been using a ton of them throughout the year, 18 months. And not only are they very aggressively priced, they look sexy. They offer uniqueness like the live mixer builds that nobody can touch in the unique design. They also are extremely reliable. They're not as finicky with regards to RAM like what may be this Asus issue. Their BIOSes are pretty straightforward, unlike this Gigabyte, and they're very, very affordable compared to most MSI boards. So that's my opinion as a business owner. You take that for whatever it's worth, but you know when you're watching builds here in the future to expect more ASRock motherboards than any other brand right now. Times change. What used to be good isn't good anymore. What used to be bad is now good. Boards I used to avoid because I thought they were no good, They got better. Their management changed. Their engineers changed. They started making better products. The boards that were cocky because they thought, hey, we're the leaders, they got lazy. They're resting on their laurels. They're using their name rather than their products to justify their superiority. And I'm looking right through it because my business can't survive on talk. I need action. I need your products to be a great value, to be reliable, to be easily accessible, right? It doesn't do me any good if they're always sold out. And I need you to have support that when I email you, I get a return gigabyte, somebody who doesn't return emails. So if you're not going to support me back, I don't want your product. So Asus is gone, Gigabyte's gone, MSI's there if the price is right. And overall, there's no competitor. ASRock just leads them all. If you're going to build your own computer, I cannot emphasize higher ASRock boards. If you just want a board that's going to work, it's going to be trouble-free, it's not picky about the parts, it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg, and they're widely available from Newegg and Amazon and anywhere that sells, Micro Center, anybody that sells computer parts is going to have an inventory of ASRock boards. As of 2024, ASRock's the king. ASRock leads them all, in my opinion. I got a business to run, so I am very passionate about what I'm going to put my name on. If I sold this Asus to a customer, or if I sold this Gigabyte to a customer, supporting these would be a nightmare. If I sold the MSI, price-wise, it'd be hard to justify the price to the customer if they're shopping me around compared to what other places charge for a similarly equipped system, right? There's a reason why when you buy pre-built or you look at what's available pre-built from businesses that build gaming PCs, you very rarely see an MSI board being used. They're very expensive and that makes their price less competitive. So in any event, those are my thoughts, but I'm relatively pissed off, if you can't tell, with Asus right now. Unacceptable. I've been spoiled by ASRock where everything just always works. And when my last Asus board started locking up on me, I thought, well, that happens. But when my second Asus board, the second one in a row, different model, started exhibiting similar properties, completely different set of parts, I'm just done with them. In order to make the video, though, I need to show how Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, and ASRock vary in how to turn off and remove the permission that they've assumed of overvolting your chip, killing your chip. They are killing your chip without your consent. And to show you how to turn it off is not simple and straightforward. Each one has a different way to do it. Gigabytes is probably the most convoluted and twisted of all of them. When you want to talk about how easy or how difficult it is the most difficult with Gigabyte because they use language nobody else uses, but it's still changing the same exact thing. But none of these boards use the same language. But most of them, the language, if you understand the words you're reading, it makes sense. With Gigabyte, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, how do those words have to do with what we're doing? But that's why I have to demonstrate it to you. So to demonstrate it to you, I've got to buy one of each board, throw an Intel processor, doesn't matter which one, just a socket 1700 board with any Intel processor, with RAM, storage, Windows 11, and a power supply, so I can demonstrate it to you. And that takes $600 a board times 4 boards, we're at $2,400. And then once that video's done, then I'll have to buy a case and a power supply to mount them and try and find buyers. So no matter which way you look at it, you're around an $800 build, a little bit more on the MSI. But regardless of that, around $800 are what these machines are going to go for. And when I'm done, that's $3,200 invested into just trying to help you guys be aware of what motherboard makers universally are doing to your chip. So out of just a off-the-cuff survey, does anybody here have an Intel CPU that's running hot? Anybody in the chat? And because there's a delay between when I ask you a question and when I see your response, while I'm waiting, I'm going to say hello to everybody in the chat. Welcome in. Welcome in. I got all the serious stuff out of the way. I can smile now and take a look at my friends joining here in the chat room. So first of all, thank you for hanging out with me today. Hello and welcome to Randy, who just became a supporter to the channel. Right on. Thank you, Randy. Ben Laird contributes £2 and says hello from Scotland. Mark Gaines with £10 says hello. Carrie, Marlena, and everyone in chat. Mark joins us from Northern Ireland. Matthew Burden renews membership, now a member for 22 months. That is so awesome. Thank you, Matthew. He says, good afternoon, Carrie, and all in chat. Happy Friday. Let's see what else we got. Scrolling. See Thomas MacT in there and NetFreak, Gary McGraw. Thank you to our friend Peter Laycock with a very generous contribution via Amazon earlier today. He's going to watch this video later, but when you do, a shout out to our friend Buster. Chris Johnson said he's got a gigabyte Aorus Z590 Elite running an i9-11900K. And he discovered in the BIOS that both the power level 1 and power level 2 settings were running at 4,096 watts. I changed them to Intel specs, which is likely 53 watts and 65 watts and 125 watts, 150. He goes, now my PC runs cooler. What a shock. It also is running more efficiently and not sucking up as much electricity. Let's see. PSC Computers Missouri says hello. There's Jason Willis saying hello, and Thomas Backenstow saying hello. PSC Computer said we used to have the opposite. ASRock was garbage and Asus was great. Yeah, I know. They changed places. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Asus used to be a great board. They also used to be expensive. They're not expensive anymore. And they're not the quality they used to be. So at least that's my opinion and my experience. And I don't have enough money to keep giving them second, third, fourth, and fifth chances when it's my reputation on the line and my customers that are getting inconvenienced. And I'm having to pay for the cost of the support and potentially still losing the customer. If the customer gets tired of being inconvenienced, they're going to take their business somewhere else, or they will take their future business somewhere else. I cannot afford to play games with Asus or any other manufacturer who wants to play games. You know, they got to have my back. They got to care. And if I'm just a number to them, then they're just a number to me. And I'll dismiss them just as easily as they're dismissing me, because I have a business to run too, and mine is nowhere near as big as theirs. So if there was a battle between me and Asus, I couldn't stand it. You know, if it was like Mortal Kombat, it'd be David versus Goliath. They'd hit me once, I'm out. I can hit them 1,000 times and they'd barely even notice it. In my business, it doesn't take many hits from customers to take me out of business. Asus can take hits from customers all day long and have no impact on their business model. So they can do that without me. Obviously, I'm not helping them and they're not helping me. So I'll find another manufacturer that's more on the same page with valuing my business. That's the way I see it, and that's the way my customers treat me. So that's where I learned it from. PSC Computers Missouri with a $10 super chat. Right on. Thank you for that. Let's see. Eric says, I learned, fortunately, the hard way with Asus, 2 boards, 1 AMD, 1 Intel. Both had major issues, and we had to return both. I don't know what's going on with Asus lately, but they just aren't what they used to be. Paul Kitching says he likes Asus, but their support is some of the worst he's experienced. Try Gigabyte support. You'll love Asus support. John Paul Bacon said he's been using Asus boards for the last 7 years and no issues. Maybe I got lucky. You know, it's really, I can't speak for anybody's experience but my own. I would never say that what I experience, you're going to experience. I would never say that what I eat and like, that you're going to eat and like it too. What I listen to and enjoy listening to for music, that you would enjoy listening to that music. I can't say that because I went to a restaurant and enjoyed it, that you wouldn't go to the same restaurant and hate it. All I'm telling you is I have a business to run. I cannot run my business like this. My business is too small, and you take that information and you do what you want with it. I'm not telling you not to buy Asus. I'm telling you I'm not buying Asus. You buy whatever you want. They might be the best brand you've ever had, and you might think I'm talking nonsense. Absolutely correct, right? Regardless if you agree or disagree with me, doesn't change the fact that I have a business to run. It doesn't stop my customers from being inconvenienced, and it doesn't stop me from having to pay for those repairs. And if it just happens to be Asus that's doing it, then Asus is the one I'm going to complain about. If it's MSI that's doing it, if it's ASRock, I'm not picking these randomly. I am sharing with you actual experience in my business, and you can take that information and use that or dismiss that. But that is what it is, and it's why you will see fewer and fewer Asus products here on this channel, just in case you're wondering. All right, just so we're clear, Nick Caffrey with a 3-month renewal here. He's now a member for 3 months in our members. He says it's been a great 3 months with good help for my new build from this amazing community. Yeah, I'll shout out to this community because it's the most valuable part of this channel is this community, not my content, honestly. The community is what makes it special, and we certainly hope if you're watching and you're not participating in our chat, you're missing 50% of the value of the channel. We'd love to have you in there. Just be nice. Pretty low bar, really. Some people can't seem to make it over that low bar, and so we have to kick them out. But if you're nice, we'd love to have you. We'd love to see you. And you're always, any nice person is welcome into our chat room at all times. We'd love to have you as a regular in our community and see this community grow with other nice, kind individuals, thoughtful people, considerate people. Colin Hunt, speaking of considerate people, there's a 10-pound super chat from Colin. Thank you, Colin. And €5 from Nick Caffrey. Thank you, Nick. Says hello to Carrie, Mara, and chat. You guys rock. Let's see. Thomas wants to know what's the best software to check temps. Well, do you suspect you're having a temperature problem? Because you can just go into the BIOS and see it right into the motherboard BIOS, what your temps are. If you watch Monday's video, I go through that, Thomas, because it looks like you are a member. And in that, I show the applications I use and how I use them. So if you've missed Monday, be sure and check that one out. And thank you for being a member, and thank you for asking the question. So again, I'm just sort of looking at what it is to run a computer repair business in 2024. And profit margins are as low as they've ever been. You're not going to make money on the sale of the hardware. You make money on the service, the installation of the computer, the transferring of the data, and getting it all set back up for the customer. More and more customers, home customers, are going away, and I say good riddance. I don't miss them, generally speaking. Most of them have ridiculous issues that are unimportant. They don't have anything to do with anything production or anything mission critical. It's just something silly that for whatever reason is driving them crazy. And then they don't want to pay you for your time. They want you to tell you how to do it over the phone for free, which is essentially free tutoring. And if you allow that, you will likely go out of business. So there's a point where you can help, and then there's a point where people will take advantage if you allow them to. If you allow them to, you don't want to be in business because you will not last long. If you set that precedent and then you fail, all of a sudden you stop doing it. If people are used to getting something from you and now you're not giving it anymore, 100% of the time, in my experience, they will be resentful and they will hate you. They will hate you for helping them and then stopping when they weren't paying for it. And when you tell them you need to get paid for it, they think it's not worth anything because you were giving it away for free this whole time. So you're a jerk. Get out of my life. I'll never call you again. That's the thank you you get for helping people for free. And all you have to do is look at any YouTube channel and read the comment section to see all the resentful, entitled, narcissistic individuals who feel as though the information wasn't good enough for them or the person who did it wrong, well, the people complaining are still taking it. They're still voluntarily clicking it and watching it. And then instead of saying thank you or simply quietly going away, they throw a baby tantrum as though they were 3 months old and need their diaper changed. So when you charge people for the things that you do, you genuinely get more appreciation. People understand that when they call you, there's going to be a bill, and they say thank you for helping them and are often appreciative when they hand you a check. If people are not happy with the service, it's very simple. We can negate the bill and you can take your business somewhere else. But there's never any reason for name calling or insulting. That's just somebody in a very sad state of mind who probably needs some medical care. However, because people are at home alone with their computers without adult supervision, they are not getting the medical care they need. They don't think they need it. And all they're trying to do is bring everybody around them down to their level. So the best way to filter those people out is to simply charge, because they don't have a job and they don't have their own home. They're often, living in somebody else's house, perhaps their mother's basement. They don't have any bills to pay. They have no job to go to, and they have no idea of the reality of interacting with people in the real world. So they are mentally ill and they're not getting the care they need. And when you put the free information out there, it's like a bug light that draws them in. When you charge for your content, whether you're in business, right? Businesses charge customers. That's why they're businesses. It doesn't matter what your business is. When you charge people, people expect to pay, and people are less likely to complain unless something is drastically not meeting expectations that you promised them. So in other words, if you're a chef and you promised them the best meal of their life for $2,500, they're going to expect the best meal of their life, and anything that falls short, they're going to be pretty upset about. But if you offer it for free, people will come and eat it and then still complain about how terrible it was. So somewhere in there, you find a reasonable amount that you charge, and you set the expectations with the customer. Here's the process. Here's how long it'll take. Here's when I'll be here. And if you meet all of that, if you do what you say you're going to do for the price you said you were going to do it for, you will have a happy customer every single time. That doesn't happen in the world of free. So if you want to be a business, at the end of the day, it's judgment call over, you might have a customer who calls you regularly and pays you regularly that you don't nickel and dime. On the other hand, you might just nickel and dime them. I've certainly seen that attitude where I've had folks that wanted to charge me a lot of money to do something, and I thought, okay, I'll pay it, but it better be good. And it was good, and it was worth the money. But then once they realized I had the money to pay it, it seems they thought that they could nickel and dime me for a bunch of other little stuff that they decided to point out also needed repair that did not need repair, or that they themselves broke and want to charge me to replace it. So that sort of nickel and diming where it's like, oh, I got somebody who's wealthy is the impression. I don't run my business that way either. Everybody gets treated the same regardless of what kind of car they drive and how big of a building or how big their office is. It's based on how many computers you have. There's a charge per computer. The more computers you have, the more work that has to be done. And then, of course, the bill would be bigger if you have more computers, and the bill would be smaller if you had fewer. It's not rocket science. It has nothing to do with the kind of work you're in. Oh, this guy's into, the stock market. He's got lots of money. I'm going to charge him more. This is a doctor. This is a lawyer. They've got money. I'm going to charge them more. There are businesses that do that. I don't do that. Everything across the board is the same. Just like a restaurant, when you sit down to eat, the meal is not more expensive for the person who's wealthy than for the person who can barely afford to eat out. That's the way I run the business. That's what I think is fair. Some people may disagree, but that's okay. When you run your business, you can run it however you want to. I'm just here to share with you my perspective on the inside of how my business runs. That's all. And if you find that information valuable or helpful, that's great. Or if it's just interesting or boring, I mean, that's entirely up to you. It's my life, though, so I find it anything but boring. I live and die by my business, essentially. So want to make sure I have happy customers. Since I had such bad luck with this Asus board, I've got another one coming. And if the other one does the same thing, yeah, everything's going to be refunded, and I will show how to adjust this on everything but an Asus board. We'll keep Asus out of it. And I'll just advise you, if you have an Asus board and your chip is overheating, go somewhere else for the information, because I won't be able to afford to make that video if the next one has the same problem. It's just getting too expensive. It was already expensive. Having it do this to me and throw my schedule off and cost me more, it's becoming financially it's untenable. It's not worth it. It's not worth it for me to spend thousands of dollars for one board when I only have to spend hundreds for others. Nothing about Asus makes that worth extra money. So let me just move some stuff off the counter. And let's go ahead and prep this MSI board. This is brand new in a box. I've never taken it out of the box before. I have a spare processor, spare RAM, and a Samsung 980. That RAM was originally put in the Asus, as was that Samsung 980 Pro Gen 4 drive, 1 terabyte. And obviously, I don't need them in there because there's something wrong with the board. So we'll just recycle them over to this board. And I'm sure this board will like them just fine, as would literally any board but Asus will like these parts without a problem. You watch. See if I'm a liar. This is all live and unscripted. I can't predict the future, but I can tell you from experience what's likely going to happen. And it's likely going to go together lickety-split, just the way we expect, without any issues, like literally every manufacturer but Asus on motherboards. That's what my experience has taught me lately. Am I wrong? Let's find out. I don't find any good reason for Asus to be that difficult. I don't think they're offering me anything any different from other manufacturers that would make it worth tolerating that level of finickiness or lack of quality. There's nothing there. If you have a board that's made by ASRock, Asus, MSI, or Gigabyte, your system's pretty much going to run exactly the same. The minute one board starts being more finicky or troublesome than another board, time to get rid of it, because at the end of the day, whatever extra time and money you're putting into it isn't resulting in a better system. Just switch to a better board. That's the way I see it. Okay, so here's our MSI. This is the Pro Z790-P. I think this was on sale. I think that's why I bought it. Normally, I wouldn't buy a Z board. I really wanted like B760 boards for this to save money. But I want to say this was discounted. So it made it worthwhile to buy the Z series. And besides, it gave me some... for some people, you know, some variety in what the BIOS might look like differently on a Z-based board versus a B-based board. Now, if we take a look here under the Windows Capture, I should have, yeah. We've got the Amazon page up for this board that tells you about it. It's a DDR5. Some of these boards, if you're not paying close enough attention for socket 1700 Intels, will be DDR4. I don't think you're going to see any difference on an i5 with DDR5 or 4. 4 is cheaper, and it just so happens I have a bunch of 4. So I would much prefer to use DDR4 because I'd like to blow out my older inventory. And again, it will not make any noticeable performance difference until you reach i7 or i9 levels of CPUs. And even then, only if you push them. But the board is pretty well equipped with Wi-Fi. And you can see here lots of USB and ports on the back. It looks really good to me. Now, we don't have a built-in I/O shield. I mean, at this price, kind of thought it would, but that's okay. It looks like we've got a BIOS flashback button right there on the bottom left, which I don't think we're going to need. And, you know, we've got a lot of reviews here, averaging 4.5 stars. So everything looks really good to me. I'm I wouldn't normally spend $189 on a board unless it was something special. 120 to 150 is usually the range that I try and stay in. If I can find a micro ATX board at 100 or less, that might solve a customer's problem. It won't affect the customer's performance at all. It only affects how much more stuff you can add to the board. And most customers, in my experience, don't add anything to their board at all. It's just software. Now you'll see this board also has 4 memory sockets, and we've got a heatsink there for the main NVMe. But the other 2 NVMe drives, and again, at this price point, I find this a bit unacceptable, but they're bare, meaning you'll want to add your own. Well, if it's Gen 3, you really don't need a heatsink, but if you're going to go Gen 4 on any of these, you want your own heatsink, and it's likely not going to match the layout of the board. At this price point, I would expect there to be heat sinks from the manufacturer included. And that's why I say MSI is just expensive. I expect an IO shield built in. MSI offers that at about a $250 price point, which I find to be shocking. So that's why I don't like MSI. It doesn't have anything to do with the quality. It's just for what you get for the money, it feels like they're gouging. So if I can get something better for less, if I feel like I'm getting more for my money from ASRock, then I'm going to buy ASRock or whoever it is that's offering me more for my money, right? I mean, that's how I see it, because I want to offer my customers better value. So my customers keep coming back to me and referring me to their friends so I can stay in business. You know, I can make one big sale once and then never have the customer come back again because they feel ripped off. Or I can make a bunch of little sales over the course of 30 years, which will continually add up to larger and larger numbers, which is the attitude I've taken. I think that's the better way to go. That's just my business choice. You may feel differently. I don't really see anybody complaining about CPUs running hot. So I don't know how big of an issue this really is for people. And I've had some doubts as to whether or not to even make this content because of how expensive it is and how few people are affected by it. So that's why I was asking earlier, if you have an Intel CPU and it's running hot, you'll know it's running hot because your fans are going to be loud all the time. If you don't know if it's running hot, it's probably fine. Unless, like I say, you're hearing fans running full speed all the time. So that's why I'm taking a look at the comments here to kind of gauge how far we want to go with this content, this particular topic. Because this has been killing me. Like, I've had systems sitting in the back room because I haven't been able to get them to cool. And now that I've learned this, one by one, they're all running fine now. But that may be just me. This may not be as big of a deal as for you guys as it is for me, because of the sheer number of computers that I have. But that's why I'm gauging it, right? I'm just asking, if you're watching the video after it airs live, let me know if you're having an issue with heat and you've been wondering why nothing seems to be solving it. Lynn's Music said he's on a laptop. Laptops don't have this problem. Mini PCs don't have this problem. This is only for desktop CPUs, not mobile CPUs. So if you're having a problem with heat on your laptop, it will not be related to this. That will be a different issue. Okay, just kind of looking in the chat, trying to get caught up before we start prepping the board, just to see if there's anything to address first. Now, they are doing this with AMD CPUs, and that will require a whole different set of motherboards, because how AMD names it and where it's located in the BIOS is something completely different. So if you have an AMD CPU that's running hot and you want to resolve it, You can Google search for that and YouTube search for it. I think other content creators have already covered it. I'm only covering Intel on this particular series. I'm not sure if I will be bothered to do this for Intel, for AMD, simply because it's going to be $3,000 for me to do it. And I'm not too motivated to spend $3,000 to help 3 viewers. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make any sense. However, the information is out there if you look for it. In fact, Reddit is a great, reliable source overall for that kind of information, more so than YouTube videos. But if you prefer YouTube videos, I'm sure there are already some content creators out there that have covered how to adjust that voltage on AMD. I'm not one of them. I very rarely use AMD. I'm not having an issue with this system back here running AMD, but I also have the single most expensive cooler I've ever purchased on it, which is one way of getting around the problem. I can do that for me. I can't do that for a customer. A customer wouldn't spend $435 on a cooler on top of the rest of the price of the system. At least none of the customers I know would. All right, let's see if we can turn on the overhead camera here. It's powered up. See if we can get you a top-down view. I think that's hooked up. Let's see if it works. Close-up camera. Yikes. All right, we're going to have to zoom in a bit. And can I draw this back? I got to bring this back more. Maybe bring that forward more. There we go. All right, that'll work. So we have decisions to make, what we want to put in first. I think the CPU is always a good place to start. The 14500 from Intel, I think, is the best bang for the buck right now. It's actually cheaper than the 13500. I don't know why. It's a better chip, and it's like $6 cheaper currently on Amazon. And then the 12500 is even cheaper, but it is noticeably slower. Not by much, though. I mean, don't get me wrong, a 12500 would be just fine. The 14500 is just better. But, you know, if you're on a budget, no shame in the 12500. It's a good chip for $200. These chips are about $350, and you're not getting $150 more performance out of it compared to the 12500. You're getting about $40 more performance out of it. But the higher up you go in performance, the less your value, your value just keeps going down, just like with a car. The more horsepower, the more horsepower you want, the more the price of the car goes up substantially, and what you get in return is reduced. That's how it works. So the 12500 is probably the best bang for the buck. But I've got to say, I really do like the price point here on the 14500. It is neither expensive nor is it cheap. It's right down the middle, which is often where I'm trying to aim, is right down the middle. So here we've got our chip. Slide that out. And take this out of here. Now there is going to be cutouts on each side of the container so that you can put your fingers in there, so that you're not touching the top or bottom of the chip. You want to avoid that. And likewise, when you open the socket here, we take the socket and we open it, there are indentations. You may I don't know if the camera's going to pick them up or not, but they're on the left and the right. And you're going to adjust this so all these words are going to go in the same direction as all the words on the board. They're all facing me. And there's a little indentation here on the side of the socket on both sides. And that's how you put your CPU in. Some people, they don't understand that that's there. And so when they're putting in their CPU, they're fidgeting around with it because they're hitting the plastic frame. They don't realize the plastic frame is cut away on both sides, so you can easily lift that CPU right back out. That's what those indentations are for. They had thought of this process, but it is not well documented. Many people don't know it. And then when I align that, I'm just putting it up against one of these edges. There's little notches that are cut out that this will only sit one way. And right now, this chip is hovering over all of those little delicate 1700 little pins underneath until we lower this on top. Now, we have to take this lid off first. And we need to save that, because if this board ever has to be returned for warranty, we need to take all of our parts out of it and send it back the way it is, the way it came out of the box. If you put anything in here or changed anything, you need to put it back the way they sold it to you, and then you can send it back for RMA. And they sold it to you with no chip in it, with this piece covering those pins, protecting those pins. If you don't put that back, your warranty is void for life, because you will effectively made the CPU or the motherboard unrepairable because you left that bare. So just so you know, you need, when you return anything in life that you've purchased from anywhere, you need to put it all back the way it was, the way you bought it, in an original condition. If you've made any modifications, if you've put a drive in here, if you put M.2 screws in here that were in the box, you need to take them out. Put it back to the way it was out of the box. If you don't, anything that you left, you may not get back. So if you leave M.2 screws in here, they're just going to send you another basic board the way it comes out of the box. And if the box contained the screws, but you already used the screws on the board you returned, you just lost your screws forever. And now you have no way to affix your M.2 drive. I cannot emphasize, if you're going to return something, you must return it in the exact condition it was sold to you in, without modification. Any modifications you make, you may not get back. Now, I always like to use this top NVMe slot first, mainly because it's got a heat sink. And then we've got what appears to be a quick disconnect right here. And that just locks that drive down. And then when it comes to the little NVMe heatsink, we can pull the tape off of here. And then we can just place that right on top the way it was. So did it go on? So there's 3 holes on this side. And there's little tabs that stick up. So that's how I can tell that needs to go on. It aligns with those little tabs. I'm glad they did that. Otherwise, I'd have no idea which way was up. And then the longer screw is going to go down on this side, and we'll just get that started. And then the shorter screw doesn't have as far down to go, so that one goes back over here. These screws are not the same, something to pay attention to when you're taking it apart. Take the screw on the right, set it on the right, take the screw on the left and put it on the left. And when you put it back together, you'll know where the screws go without having to analyze it like I just did to figure out, you know, by looking at it where it has to go. Usually it's pretty obvious if you pay that much attention, but a lot of people just don't pay attention. Not until they go to put it back together, and then they realize, oh, I should have been paying more attention. Now, the cooler already has thermal compound applied to it, so we don't have to add any, nor should we. You definitely don't want to mix thermal compounds. There's enough. In fact, there is just enough, as determined by the manufacturer of the CPU. And the cooler provided is also enough, as determined by the manufacturer of the CPU. These boneheads that think that these stock coolers are no good obviously have no idea how to run a business. Intel has no intention of selling you a stock cooler that's not good enough so that your CPU will die and cost them money to replace it under warranty. Intel would be out of business if they did that. So these boneheads that say, oh, these stock coolers aren't good enough, these are people who are elitist snobs who want to spend more money because it makes them feel like they're superior and their system will be better than yours because they didn't use the stock equipment. Now, if you choose to adopt that behavior in psychology, you have every right to believe that way. But if you just want to be a regular person getting practical value for your money, there's no reason this stock cooler on an i5 Intel chip is not adequate. Of course it's adequate, unless your CPU is overvolting your chip, which of course is the whole point of this video. I see people replacing these coolers and blaming these coolers when they should be blaming the motherboard manufacturer. So I need to make sure all these towers are turned away from me so that they're in the lock position. Then I'll push down on one corner and then another in the opposite corner. And then one more time, and you will hear them click, and then we can put the CPU fan on, you'll find the word practicality comes out of my mouth a lot, and that's because that's what the vast majority of customers are interested in. They're not interested in excess, and they're not interested in, at least the customers I've met in the 30 years in business, they're not interested in showing off, and they're not interested in indulgence, and they're not interested in spending money on something they don't need to spend money on. So that's why there's little liquid cooling and RGB and cases with glass that show them off. It's boasting, and it's very much seen as a childish thing by businesses and homeowners alike that feel like if I was 14 years old, I'd probably be totally into that. But at 14 years old, they wouldn't be able to afford it. So basically, when you're buying 10 or 15 or 20 computers for your office, you don't want to spend all that extra money for something that might ultimately distract your employees or might give your customers a false sense that what you do here isn't serious. I don't need a lawyer's office with a bunch of video games. I want a lawyer's office that's serious. I want a dentist office that's serious. I want a doctor's office that's serious. This isn't something that should be toyed with, and I don't want to go to a business that's sending a message that all we do is have fun here. I don't know that I want my doctor having fun, especially if I'm on an operating table. I don't need them, dancing and making TikTok videos where they're operating on me. But that's just the way I see it. Let's see. Might be having a package delivered here. Interesting. Anyway, let's go with RAM. So here I've got the OLOY, and unfortunately, the only DDR5 RAM I have is RGB. I just realized I don't have any non-RGB RAM. This was built for showcase PCs, not for customers. So because it's all I have, I'm not going to buy additional RAM just for this video series. Now, usually the first two sockets we're going to use are going to be on the first two here, starting at the edge of the board. And then we'll use the first one, skip one, and use the second, the third one, keeping the one closest to the CPU unused. That's usually the layout. And it does verify in a small diagram and in the manual that if you're only going to use two RAM sockets, those are the two to use. So we're going to go ahead and install this very quickly, and then we should be able to do our first power on self-test once we get a power supply, keyboard and mouse, and power switch hooked up to it. So here is our RAM. This is OLOY. And the speed of it, I think, is what, 5,200, something like that. But it should be way overkill for an i5-14500. And we'll go ahead and just pop these bad boys in. One of the things you'll learn about running a business is things need to move like a well-oiled machine. If anything holds the machine up, then everything waiting behind all gets held up. And then when those things get held up, everything behind them gets held up. And then customers start losing patience when timelines aren't met. And if you're getting stuck because your RGB lighting isn't working, it's taking extra time on the cable management. In the meantime, you've got other machines to build that don't have that issue. My attitude is to push that machine aside and go with the basic ones, get those done first, and let the person with all the excess be the one who waits, rather than making everybody else wait behind the one with excess. And I have to, because I'm a one-man shop, and that's just how I have to stay in business. I have to keep everything moving at all times. I can't stay in one spot too long without customers giving up and going somewhere else. So there is some pressure at it. And when you're a home user and you're just looking for a little home build project, have fun with it. You want to throw RGB and liquid cooling and spend all this money just for the sake of, having some fun. Go for it. You're doing it for a very different reason than I'm doing it. So I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm saying the reasons justify the actions we take. So if you're running a business, this is something you need to consider. If you're not running a business, then you don't need this to worry you. You may only build one computer every 5 years. Okay, now, with that all hooked up, let me go ahead and get HDMI and power, and then a keyboard and mouse, and then we'll see if this bad boy boots up, whether or not we have a BIOS update. We'll figure all that out, and then we'll get Windows 11 installed on it and updated, and then it will be ready then for the upcoming video regarding where the overvolting is taking place. And we'll demonstrate it overvolts out of the box, and there's really nothing you can do about it unless you intentionally know how to turn it off, which is not easy. It's not straightforward. It is complex. It is technical. They do not make it easy, but I can show you how to do it, and I can make it a process that you can follow, even if it doesn't make any sense to you. If you follow along with that particular brand of board, you should be able to easily change it yourself, even if you don't understand why. That's how complicated this whole thing is. And again, for people who understand this stuff, they could easily turn it on if they wanted it turned on. But to turn it on for everybody without telling them, and then not make it easy for them to turn it off, I don't know. That just sounds like a class action lawsuit to me all day long. Just waiting for that to happen. So here's the keyboard and mouse that I'm plugging in right now. And here we go. We've got the power supply turned on. I need a power switch, which I have right here. And that's going to go where all power switches go on all boards, right there. In theory, when I fire this up, we should post. It should bring us into the BIOS, and we should be able to update the BIOS to a newer version. Likely what's in the box is an older version. And I've already gone online and downloaded the latest BIOS without, I'm just making an assumption that the latest BIOS is not going to be. I could be wrong. There's one way to find out though, and let's go over to our HDMI input. Let's turn that on, and let me put myself in a corner here for camera one. So let's see what happens. Now that first boot could take a minute or 2 or 3. I see the RAM starting to, well, the RGB is lit up. The CPU fan is turning. These are all expected activities. I expect the no signal to become a power on self-test screen from MSI. After it trains the CPU and RAM, there it goes. It says F1 to run setup. That's fine. We'll run F1. Did I turn the keyboard on? F1. Okay. And let me get rid of camera one so we can get a full screen of this BIOS. Now the machine has shut itself off. Basically, I'm accepting the training settings, and now it's restarting with those training settings on the RAM and CPU. And that's all automatic, and you just have to wait for that. After that's set, it should boot much faster from that point forward. If we look at the BIOS, we can see our BIOS version in here somewhere. I'm going to have to go full screen so I can read this thing. It's very small on my side. It says we're on BIOS version AA0. So I'm going to take this flash drive, this green U-disk that I've got here, and plug it into any available USB port. It recognizes our i5-14500 and our 32 gigs of RAM. And I will go to M-Flash. You want to enter in flash mode? Yes, I do. On MSI boards, that usually causes them to reboot. Nobody else does this. This is something only MSI does. It's very strange. But regardless, it doesn't really make any difference to me. It's just different. And then it enters what it calls flash mode, at which point it will look for an updated flash, which it automatically finds on our flash drive, because that's the only media we have installed. The NVMe drive that I put in has no partition or format. So this is the only thing that has any data on it. And that AC1, that is the latest BIOS. So we'll give that a click. Are you sure to select this? Yes. Now I believe this is a beta BIOS, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with testing beta BIOSes. I can always roll back one to a non-beta if necessary. It's not like it's a one-way road unless the manufacturer says that, which they did not. So in most cases, beta BIOSes are typically taken off beta after a certain period of time. And in rare cases, they're taken down entirely because something's wrong with them. But usually beta BIOSes are trouble-free. They're just a boilerplate safety precaution that, you know, just in case kind of a scenario. Just in case we miss something on the beta BIOS, which seems unlikely when you've got 12 different BIOS versions out and the 13th one is a beta. They're just building on top of each other. So if they've already done 12 that are public, the 13th one is just an expansion of the 12th, which was an expansion of the 11th, or an evolution thereof. It's not like they're starting over from scratch with something completely different. So to call it a beta as sort of a CYI, a cover your butt scenario, is primarily what it's there for, as a disclaimer, sort of put it on you. If you have a problem, don't put it on us, even though you wouldn't likely have a problem. But they don't want to tell you that. They'd rather tell you to not do it if there's any chance at all it could go wrong. In fact, they'll tell you not to update your BIOS unless you have to, even though I've never seen a BIOS update go bad in years. But the boilerplate is, if you could screw up your system, please don't. Leave it alone. That's the manufacturer's perspective, because calling them for support over a situation you created that you didn't need to make is something they don't want to deal with. Now, what's interesting here with MSI is they're going to adjust the power limit. With this latest BIOS, they're making it clearer for the first time ever of where they're going to set the power limits on the chip. So 65 watts on the PL1 or power limit 1 with 154 watts on power limit 2. These are the Intel recommended standards. But if you have a tower air cooler, something like a Psy, the Mugen, you know, they can raise that up a bit, make it 288 and 288, but that also means your CPU will always run at 288, even when it's idle at the desktop, generating more consumption of power and more heat, even though you're sitting there doing nothing, which seems stupid. And then it says water cooler power limit 4096. That doesn't literally mean you're jumping up 40 times higher than, 20 times higher than the other value. What this means is this can go to 350, 375, whatever the chip can handle, until it screams out in pain, asking for forgiveness. And please stop electrocuting me. So this just means infinity. 4096 is the biggest number, and it means that you can put any number in here until the CPU screams in pain. At that point, you dial it down. This is waterboarding the CPU. This is not water cooling, this is waterboarding. So I am not a fan of this. In theory, like I would turn on the CPU fan fail warning. So if the CPU fan's not turning, I'd want to know. And I would also set my cooler up, which should be here somewhere. I'm going to leave XMP off right now because we want to make sure we have a system that's running properly before we start turning turbos on. Because then when you turn the turbo on, if it starts crashing, then at least you'll know it wasn't crashing before the turbo. And then that'll help you diagnose and fix that. So when it comes to the cooler, I'm trying to find that screen where we were selecting our cooler. Now, ASRock has something very similar. So we want to go into fan info. No, it's not the fan info. Is it under favorites? No, we don't have anything under favorites. Hardware monitor. No, that's not what I want either. So it's great that that screen came up, but now I'd like to bring it up again because I didn't set it to the stock cooler. And now I don't know where it is. See, this is the problem. I like that it brought it up, but I don't like that it's not on the basic page here. It should be here, very easily obvious, conspicuous. Let's go under CPU. Is it there? No. So we're going to have to go to advanced mode to find this. So under advanced, under overclocking settings, there should be an option to change our cooler. Cooler tuning. Okay, so with this boxed cooler, that's what we've got. That should be setting our PL1 and PL2 to Intel stock. Now, that's likely still going to be too much. However, I'm going to hit F10 to save this, and that's the only change I want to make. That and turning on the CPU fan fail, I don't know why that wouldn't be on by default. And while that's happening and it's accepting those new settings, let's go back over here temporarily to camera 1 so you can see what I'm going to do here now, which is, first of all, we make sure it still boots. We're going to shut it down. I'm going to pull the flash drive here that I had the BIOS update on because I don't need that anymore. And I'm going to put my Windows 11 installation media. And you can make your own legal Windows installation media from Microsoft directly, so you know you're not getting pirated software. It's all free. Microsoft wants you to make it. You don't need a product code. It'll install in trial mode, and it'll run in trial mode forever. If you want to buy a product key for it and activate it afterwards, I recommend VIP CDK deals because you can buy a Windows 10 Pro product key for less money and use it to activate Windows 11 Pro with no need to install Windows 10 Pro. The product key will activate Windows 11 Pro for less money than an 11 Pro key costs. So when I install this, I'm going to install it without a product key as Microsoft intends for us to do. So we'll turn this back on. And the only thing it can boot from right now is this flash drive. There's nothing else bootable because the NVMe drive still has not been partitioned or formatted. So without having to go into the BIOS, without having to instruct the date and time or the boot options, just leave it alone and it'll automatically do everything on its own, including automatically setting the date and time once Windows 11 is done installing. I leave it unplugged from the internet during the install so it does not force me to create a Microsoft account. Once all of this is done and we put in our drivers and our updates, then and only then can we look at where the voltage settings are and how they're affecting us. So to do this for 4 different motherboards at these expenses is extraordinarily time consuming and it is complex and it shouldn't be happening by default, and yet all the manufacturers are doing it. And as far as I'm concerned, they're screwing over every single customer who has no idea they're cooking their CPUs and their power bill is going up because of it. So let's go back to full screen over here as we go through this process. I've demonstrated this process countless times on this channel, but just for kicks, we'll go through it again. We stick with the default settings and we hit install now. This is a basic Windows 11 installation media that is from Microsoft. It is not pirated. Don't use pirated software unless you don't care about your identity and you like to solve computer problems all the time. Here we click, we don't have a product key. Microsoft puts this option here on purpose. It's not a mistake. It says, well, if you don't have a product key, what product are you intending to put a key on for? It'll be for Windows 11 Pro. If we put the product key in, it'll know the product key is for whatever version of Windows. I'm going to be putting in Windows 11 Pro. Then I hit next. And it's going to ask us to agree to the license agreement, which you have no choice. I always choose custom. And it leads us to our one installation media. Now, if I was at home and I had 6 drives in my computer and I'm rebuilding my computer, I would only hook up my main C drive at first. Don't plug in all your drives unless you are risky, foolish, or you don't give a damn what ends up happening to your data. In order to do this professionally, securely, and to make sure you're doing it right the first time without any possibility of a mistake, you only hook up your C drive and nothing else at this time. That way you cannot make a mistake. It is not possible for you to accidentally erase your data. So you can't use those drives now anyway. It is a completely pointless exercise to go through the process of hooking them all up prior to turning the computer on. You're wasting your time, you're short-sighted, and you're going to have an invitation for problems. So you start with, regardless of how many drives you have, when you do a clean install, you disconnect all of them, but the one you want your installation on. And then you won't make any mistakes. It'll work perfectly every single time without error. Make your choice. I'm just telling you what to expect. So when we're in business and we're dealing with customers' machines, you try and tell the customer you just accidentally erased their data drive. And you let me know how that goes for you. So that's why we do it that way. Now, after Windows 11 is installed and we've got drivers installed and we've got updates installed, then and only then do we start plugging in any additional data drives. That's one of the last things you do, and you do it one at a time. That way, if any of the data drives are a cause of why you're there working on the machine, you'll know it the minute you plug it in, and you'll instantly know the problem, and you'll instantly know the solution. It's a much faster, more logical, efficient way to work that implies to your customer, you know your stuff. When you try and do everything at once, it shows a laziness, it shows a lack of foresight, and it shows an apathy that you don't care. All you're telling to your customer is, I'm going to slap this together as quickly as I can and get out of here. That's where mistakes are going to be made. Oversights, things you didn't realize because you worked too quickly, because you didn't care enough about the quality of your work. And then the consequences will be between you and your customer. So you decide how you want to do it, but there is a reason why I do it this way. And it's for safety, security, and efficiency. So you take that and embrace it or throw it away. Makes no difference to me. But nothing you say will change my process because my business lives or dies on it, as does my customers' faith in my abilities. And so by doing it this way, it ensures consistency no matter whose computer I'm working on, regardless of its simplicity or complexity. It's always done the same. And doing it the same means there's less you have to remember. Just follow the process the same every time, and you will get the same result every time. The minute you start deviating, that's when you get surprises, that's when you get blindsided, and that's when suddenly customer confidence can drop because they're now trying to solve a problem you weren't expecting to have. And you don't even know where to begin. So, best to avoid that. Now, Easter is this Sunday, and also it's World Backup Day. Of course, every day should be World Backup Day, but I'm thinking maybe we'll do a video on Sunday to talk about making copies. That's all backups are, making copies. Anything that's important to you, you should be making copies of it. And we've talked about it and talked about it and talked about it, and people are still not doing it. People are losing data every day due to ransomware, drive failures, viruses, accidental deletions. Oh my goodness. And then it's always the same sob story over and over. I didn't know. I didn't know. I knew I was supposed to make a backup, but I didn't know how to make it. So look, World Backup Day is a good reminder that if you haven't done it in a while, you've been procrastinating it. Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. So we're going to talk about that with our friends at Acronis, as well as taking a look at maybe some Synology NAS solutions. Lots of different ways to make copies. All right, we're through the first boot up, and we can go through the final setup routine here on Windows 11 Pro, which is United States, US, skip the secondary keyboard language, skip the internet, tell it twice. That way we don't have to make a Microsoft Online account since this is going to a customer. I just put a username of user with a blank password, so it'll go right to the desktop every time. And I turn off everything but location settings, which a customer can modify in the control panel. Nothing I'm doing here is permanent unless they want it to be. Every machine is set up the same. So if a customer calls with a question about how their machine was set up, I can answer it because it was set up the same way as every other customer's machine I've ever set up in my life. Everything is consistent. Everything is the same. The help is faster. and less help is required. Things you got to work on when you're working at scale. When you're doing your own system and you're working on one computer, it's who cares? You do whatever you want. It's your consequences, it's your benefits, it's your money, it's your time. When it's other people's money and time, and other people are waiting for their turn because it's taking you too long to get this other one done, you'll find the attitude is very, very different when doing it. And so by introducing that concept to you, I think it gives you a different perspective and a more realistic one if it's something you think you might want to do for a living. It's very rewarding, it's very fun, and if you enjoy doing this, you can be up to your earballs in work. And it just never ends. It's just more and more and more. People are only adding more computers. The number of computers on the planet Earth are growing every day, not shrinking. Now, we've got Windows 11 completely installed here. And with that installed, I can go ahead and remove my installation media and go ahead and plug it into the internet now for the very first time. And what that'll do is allow us to grab our automatic updates. Now, on some motherboards, you may have a video, you might have a network card that the device manager doesn't know what it is. If this network card is not recognized by Windows 11, we will not be able to connect to the internet unless we use the Wi-Fi adapter or we get a USB to Ethernet adapter. So I'm kind of curious if I look at the device manager here, if it sees our network card. You see this network controller right here? That tells us it does not see our network card. And therefore, we cannot get online unless we want to get on through the wireless. It sees the wireless card, which is why it offered it to us during the installation of Windows. So you could use another computer to go to the motherboard manufacturer's website, download the network card driver onto a USB flash drive, and then be able to just load it up through USB. Or Amazon sells a USB to network adapter, which has drivers built into Windows. And if you just simply take the network cable and plug it into this USB adapter, and then plug the USB adapter into literally any USB port on the back of the computer, Windows will recognize that and load that driver. That will enable us to get on Windows Update, and Windows Update will likely load the driver for the network card that's built into the board. So you only need to use this for like 1 or 2 boots, and then you can take it off. If it's just you, it's probably not a problem that you need to solve by buying a part. But if you're working on customers' computers and you're seeing 3 to 8 computers a week, that comes in handy and pays for itself after your first time. Otherwise, if you have a spare computer and you can just go to the motherboard manufacturer's website, download the driver onto a flash drive, you could save a little money in exchange for your time to go and do that, extract the zip file, put it into a folder, go to the device manager and manually load it. That is an option as well. Some manufacturers may even pop up like, was it ASRock, I think, will pop up with it'll ask you if you want to download the utilities right when you do your first Windows install, which is really nice. Really like that, because then it just goes to MSI's website and grabs all your missing drivers for you. I wish all motherboard manufacturers do that. And the fact that these boards that cost more don't do that is very disappointing to me. So you're actually getting even more money or even more value for your money from ASRock when they do. So now the little icon down here on the bottom right, that shows we have network access. So we can go ahead and hit the settings button and go to Windows Update. Now, if the date and time are wrong, they will self-correct, or you can force them by simply going to adjust date and time and say to set the time automatically, and make sure to set the time zone automatically. Time zone and the time. And accept the change. Now we should have the right date and time on there. As long as we're within 10 years, it's nothing you have to adopt. Windows will install just fine. If your date range is 10 years ahead or 10 years behind, then manually changing it. But if it's not 10 years ahead or 10 years behind, leave it alone. It fixes itself, and it automatically sets that date and time in the BIOS That's what a UEFI BIOS does. It communicates with the operating system. And if you look here at all these drivers that are being installed, we have a bunch of Bluetooth, wireless, and network drivers. Those are obviously the ones built into the motherboard, so that we should not need to go to the motherboard manufacturer's support page. Once we hit Windows Update, it looks like those drivers are being provided for us automatically. We can look under any advanced options just to see if there's any drivers in there. And I always like to turn this and this on and to notify me. And I do see 3 available optional updates here, which, let's see, there's one here. Is it just 2? Was I misreading it from a distance? We'll grab them. Absolutely going to grab those. And we'll just add that to the stack. Once this reboots with those drivers put in, I should then be able to plug the network card, the network cable directly into the motherboard without the use of the USB adapter any longer. It's just a temporary thing to get us through. And they're very inexpensive on Amazon. They're like 12 bucks or something. And you can use them on any number of computers, laptops, desktops, as many times as you need. So as a shop tool, it's like a screwdriver. It's very, very worth the money. And you just never know when you're going to need it. So it's great to have it in such a case. So while that's installing, there's a couple other things I like to change. One is the this icon down here bugs me. So that's under search permissions. And I just scroll down here to where it says more settings and turn that on. Then the other thing I don't like is the sleep settings. So I'll go to edit, power, just leave that. Oops, typed it wrong. Start without my data. Let's turn that. Let's close off. And then let's go to edit, power, right there. And we'll change this to 3 hours so it doesn't go to sleep on me while I'm trying to do updates. And I also don't like the notification settings bothering me. So I'll go to notifications and I will say turn the notifications off. And then finally, I'll look down here on the task manager, go to taskbar settings, and I want to turn this off and this off. I don't want to see that nonsense. And under system tray icons, I do want to see this one and I want to see this one. I don't want to see that one. I do want to see this one and I do want to see this one. So they will appear here. That way I can see the Windows security settings wants my attention, so I can click it instead of it being hidden. And even though the things it wants my attention for are meaningless nonsense for marketing, I'm going to dismiss those so that it won't bother me and tell me there's anything wrong, because there is nothing wrong by choosing to not have my account on Microsoft. Microsoft giving that an exclamation point as though it's a danger is just purely BS marketing. Get the latest updates as soon as they're available. We definitely want to turn that on as well. So while that installs, let me go back full screen over on camera 1. I didn't realize camera 1's been on the whole time. I hope you were able to see everything I was doing without the camera covering it up. And then let's take another look here in the chat room and see what's on your mind. Eric says, what do you think about most companies not having the I/O shield installed? I don't care. It's your money. If you're not aware of what you're buying, don't buy it. When you're buying the board, they show you pictures of the board. If the board shows it's got an I/O shield installed and it doesn't come with one installed, then you would have a beef to pick. But when you're ordering a board and you are very aware that that board does or does not have an I/O shield, and you make your purchasing decision, then that's your decision. And for you to expect anything differently would be unreasonable. They're not reading your mind. They don't know what you want. They're assuming that when you click on something to buy it, that's what you wanted. If that's not what you wanted, then don't buy that. Make sure you buy one with an I/O shield built in if that's important to you. If it's not important to you, don't buy it. It's not a crapshoot. It's not like you're getting a mystery box and you don't know what's inside of it. You know exactly what you're going to buy before you buy it. If that matters to you, stop buying things you don't want to buy. I don't know how else to explain that, but that seems like a weird kind of thing to complain about. Nobody's making you buy any of this stuff. If you want that, it's available. Just buy one that's got one. So it doesn't matter to me. I love options. I love that people can make a choice that matters to them. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. you know, by doing that, it's adding cost to the system. And by forcing everybody to have to pay more when they don't necessarily want to pay more, they'd rather save the money and put the IO shield in themselves. Why deny them that right? So that's just the way I see it. Generally, more expensive boards do have the IO shields built in. You're expecting that, expect to pay more. You want more, more costs more. That's all. Let's see. Let me roll back a little bit here to see what I've missed. That stock fan is whisper quiet, by the way. We're not running into any heat issues, at least not at this point. All right, just kind of looking through your comments here, see if there's anything I can address. With regards to any performance loss using a stock cooler, it's an illusion. You're effectively willing to spend hundreds of dollars in order to imply that you are now superior because your CPU runs 6% faster. Most clients, I don't ever have had a client in the history of my business that's ever complained about the performance of a computer that was resolved through fans. This is something people on the internet do who watch videos and get brainwashed into believing that spending that kind of money to go through that much trouble to get that much more indifference is actually a difference worth having. I would argue that whatever performance degradation you feel you're losing on a stock cooler is so insignificant that without testing software, you yourself would not be able to tell the difference. It's all an illusion. It's a placebo, and it's used to sell parts. There's a lot of money to be made to sold to enthusiasts that regular users won't buy. Regular users have razor thin profit margins on what you sell them. Enthusiasts will open their wallets and dump tons of cash into stuff to get very little in return, which is high profit. So manufacturers love the enthusiasts because the profit margin on enthusiasts that are so fast and loose with their cash over minimal, negligible results is unlike the rest of the business where everybody's monitoring value. When people throw away value because all they want is performance, that's a different class of person. And they don't represent the majority, but they will sit there and tout to the majority just how much smarter they are and better they are because they bought a better cooler and now their CPU is faster than yours. But it's only faster by like 6%. So what? People do the same thing with cars. You know, they'll buy the Corvette, you know, C8 or whatever it is, and the Dodge Hellcat, and they will spend a lot of money on insurance. They will get terrible gas mileage. They will ruin the planet Earth. They will add to global warming. They will do the same with their computer. It doesn't matter that it's not efficient anymore, that it's sucking in more power and in return giving you less performance per power that it's drawing. They don't care. All they care about is it's faster, and it doesn't matter what it costs. That is an enthusiast attitude and one that is typically found on the internet. What we're doing here is we're trying to emphasize to people that that attitude is not the normal one that most computer owners have, nor is it one most computer owners care about. They want a system that's fast. They want a system that's reliable and quiet, and they want a system that's affordable. So the minute you want to exceed and go to some excessive performance on anything, cars or trains or jet boats, the price, the insurance, the maintenance, the cost of running it, it all goes up. And in return, you get this much more. If that's your thing, man, that's cool. You're not doing anything wrong. But we don't do that here. I'm not here to endorse that sheepish mentality that just dumping more power into something automatically makes it better, and dumping more money into something makes it better because you have more money than somebody else. That means your system's better. No, I disagree. I think the system that runs efficiently for less money is the smarter person. But again, I'm running a business and I want to attract customers. I don't want to attract 2 customers. I want to attract a world of customers. So to each their own. You know, that's why manufacturers sell these excessive, unnecessary coolers at excessive and unnecessary prices, because there's enough people out there that will spend that kind of money and in return get that much more performance difference. And they will swear to everybody, you should all do it, because that 6% is all the difference. 6% is they're spending that time, that money, and that effort to get that added performance. But when you figure out what the added performance really is, it's almost unnoticeable to a human being outside of benchmarking software. So I'm not here to endorse that. I'm also not here to tell you you shouldn't do it. If you want to do that, literally almost every YouTube channel that covers this kind of information is appealing to those enthusiasts. For the regular folks who own computers, there's not many channels like this that bring it back to reality and practicality. If 6% matters to you and you've got $400 to burn, you can get that 6% for $400. In the meantime, this whole setup is $600. So we'd be spending 60% more to get 6% back. It doesn't make any sense. Miguelito with $5 in Super Chat. Windows should have an option during install, like a pop-up that says, this partition has data, yes or no, to prevent data loss. It does say that. It does. It already does. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. If you've got 5 drives in your computer and you're upgrading it, and all 5 drives were in use, all 5 drives have data. So how do you know which drive was your C drive? You'd have to know by the make and the size. But what if all 5 drives are the same make and size? What if they're all Samsung 970 EVO 2 terabyte drives? How do you know which Samsung 970 2 terabyte EVO is the C drive? It'll say it's got data on it. Good luck. If you want to spend time sifting through that rather than just not plugging it in, it seems like your solution is a much harder way to get about doing things. It's not saving you any time to plug them in later. Whether you plug them in now or you plug them in later, it's going to take you the exact same amount of time. There is no incentive or benefit for you to do that sooner. The downside is it creates a confusion and it requires an investigation and time to verify you're installing on the right drive. To encourage Microsoft, to encourage people to do it the hard way when there's no financial or time penalty to actually doing it one at a time is not logical. It just makes more sense. Plug in one drive at a time. You can't plug in more than one drive at a time anyway. It takes 2 hands. So unless you've got 6 hands, you're not going to be plugging in all the drives simultaneously. You're not saving time. You're only adding unnecessary confusion voluntarily for no good reason. There's no benefit to it. So, but Microsoft already tells you if the drive's got data on it for sure. But what data it's got, can't tell you that until the operating system's installed for obvious reasons. Without an operating system, you can't see the data on the drive. So anyway, can't put the cart before the horse. But thank you for the contribution and the comment. Greg said, I've used Thermaltake coolers on CPUs that only cost $40. Yeah, of course. And the performance on the CPU would be pretty much negligible. You'd be maybe 1.5%, 2% tops performance difference going with a bigger cooler. You're not going to see a big drop or a big performance boost just sticking a different air cooler on it. Now, if it's a massive air cooler, one of those big Noxias that covers up all your RGB and you can't see anything and it's ugly as sin, and you don't care what it looks like and you don't care how loud it is, that can drop your CPU temp by, say, 10 degrees Celsius, maybe 13 at the most. And in result of that, you might get an extra 100 megahertz, 200 megahertz out of an already 5,000. So what is 100? What is the percentage of that of 5,000? 5% performance increase? Like if you live in a world where a 5% performance increase is justifiable to you, I'd really like to better understand what you use your computer for, where that makes any sense. Because I don't have a single customer, not one, that would notice a 5% increase, but they would all notice the added cost to the price of the computer. So I see people chasing numbers, but very rarely can anybody tell me why that actually matters in real life. How 5% is night and day and makes any real difference that matters. I've yet to have anybody justify that to me. At least in the real world. Online, people can tell you stories all day long. And it's your money, blow it however you want. I don't care. I'm just telling you, as a business owner, my customers would be pretty offended if I tried to sell them 5% more power by adding more labor and more parts. There's not a single customer I have that would even notice 5% more power on any new computer I build. So why would they spend the money and the time to buy a part that's unnecessary, that makes no difference in how fast they open Word or Excel or PowerPoint or TurboTax or their scheduling software, their billing software, the emails that they get? PC security is a much bigger concern, and also network connectivity is a bigger concern, and being able to print to the printer is a bigger concern. That printer ain't going to print any faster, and that employee isn't going to type any faster or read any faster. So if the computer's 5% faster, nothing else is. So you can make your computer as fast as you want. You're still as slow as you've ever been. That doesn't make you faster. So if you believe that and you think it's worth it, by all means, spend the money. But when I'm talking to my customers, I'm trying to tell them practically where the money should go with regards to productivity, reliability, and security. Those are our three main factors. And when performance is 5%, it's not having any impact on productivity, not at all. But it is having an impact on budget, especially when you're having to do 10 or 20 of them at a time. So again, as a business, it's very different. As a home user, you might just want it for no reason at all. I just decided I wanted 5% more, and I just decided this money was burning a hole in my pocket, and rather than feed the homeless with it, I decided to buy an unnecessary cooler to get unnecessary performance because it's my money. It's my computer, and that's what I wanted. It has no logical statement at all. It's all emotional. That's perfectly acceptable, but that's not how I sell computers in my business. It's not an emotional purchase. It's always a logical one. I've got to be able to justify the cost to the customer. If I can't justify the cost, then it appears I don't know what I'm doing, right? From the customer's perspective, you've got to tell me, why are you recommending these parts? Why is it this price? Be happy to explain it. Because remember, the customer's likely ordering 10 or 20 of them, and it adds up real quickly. We're talking about a bill that's going to be $20,000 potentially. And it's something they don't do every day, maybe something they only do every 5 or 6 years. And they want to make sure this is going to set us up for the next 5 or 6 years. I'm making an investment here, right? These are going to be reliable, secure. You're going to deliver them on time. Yes, yes, yes. They don't care about RGB lighting or liquid coolers or if it's 5% faster. That just doesn't play out in the real world in business. And there's just not enough YouTube channels that explain this. The YouTube channels would have you believe this is all everybody cares about. And in my world, I've never met one person who cared about it except for a couple of home users here and there. And they're people I generally won't service because they're very difficult people to please who, are never happy. They're just never happy. So let them do it themselves. because they're the ones who are going to fight with you about it. They're the ones who are going to tell you how to do your job. I don't need those customers. They're too costly in support costs, and they have too much time on their hands. That's what YouTube is for, you know, for people to do that on their own and enjoy yourself, right? My videos aren't for those people. Those people already have all the videos. It's the rest of us that are getting ignored. So that's just my opinion on it. I'm not telling you how to spend your money. You spend it any way you want. I'm just explaining why the decisions are made and how it's differing when you have a business to run and you have customers to answer to. And you've got to be able to justify your expenses. That's a hard sell. Tell a customer they're going to pay $40 more to get 5%. Yeah. If even 5%, really. €1 from Peter. Thank you, Peter. Richard said he's having an issue with PowerShell. He's even got Windows 11 Pro installed now. I guess, Richard, when he opens the PowerShell command, the PowerShell window opens and then immediately closes, and he can't do anything about it. And he claims it's doing it on both his desktop and his laptop, and I've never had a customer ever explain that symptom before, and I have no idea what it is. So if any of you have any ideas that might help Richard, I'm sure he would appreciate it, because at this point, I would have to see it. I feel like there's information Richard's not giving me that would answer this. But, you know, it could be his keyboard or his mouse, or he could be inadvertently pressing a key he doesn't realize he's pressing. I can't see what he's doing, but I can tell you I've never heard of this symptom in my life. He is uniquely having a problem, which may or may not be something he has caused. I don't know, but it's definitely not normal, common, or even so much as a recorded history of anybody. It's very unique and it's very different. And I'm not exactly sure what he's doing differently or what is different about his system. There's definitely something different going on there. There's a lot of variables. He is running it as administrator, just in case you're wondering, and it just immediately closes. As soon as it opens, whether he's running it as administrator or not makes no difference. He can run it in safe mode, it makes no difference. He can run it on his laptop, it makes no difference. Every time he opens it, it closes. He can't seem to figure it out, and I've never heard of the symptom. In the history of the internet, I've never heard of this symptom. So when we have unique problems, I enjoy having those on the bench in front of me. I can usually solve them within 8 minutes if it's in front of me. But when someone's describing it to you, they're often not describing the very thing I need to see, because they don't know they need to describe it to me. So we end up just going around in circles and frustrating each other. So I don't know what to tell them. But if any of you have ideas, yeah, please let Richard know. I'm sure he would appreciate it. And then if it does fix it, I would love to know the fix. Even though I've never had anybody have this problem before, having the fix probably won't ever come in handy. But, you know, there's that curiosity in me that really wants to know. Let's see how we're doing on our updates over here. And if you are having any computer problems at all, this is the place to ask. We have a very knowledgeable chat room and an amazing community here that are always happy to help out and offer suggestions. So a lot of times when I don't know the answers, or sometimes the answers are not agreed with by others, you have a choice of choosing other people's potential solutions. Everybody here is legitimate and caring, and they will do their best to try and help you. There's nobody here who's going to, you know, tell you to format the C drive or something like that. At least their hearts are all in the right place. Richard says, can I send a short video to you? The video doesn't help me to see the problem, Richard. I believe you that when it's opening, it's closing. What I don't believe is that your Windows installation is correct, that you don't have some third-party software installed you haven't told me about, that there's not a crossed wire or a stuck switch on your keyboard or on the wiring of the board where you might be a pin off on one of your connections. There's too much information that you can't see it, so there's no way for you to show it to me. If you did see it, you wouldn't be asking me for help because you'd already have the problem solved. Showing me what you're seeing when you can't see the problem is showing me what you can't see. If I can't see the same thing you can't see, then it doesn't do me any good to help you solve the problem. I have to see what I want to see, not what you want to show me, because you're not seeing it. So you can't show me what you're not seeing. So that makes that exercise completely pointless. I would have to have the machine in front of me so I can go over the cabling and I can go over the installed software so I can verify where the issue is. But I guarantee there's an issue in there. That is not a normal behavior, and it is likely being caused by, it could be a bad driver, it could be a stuck key on your keyboard, it could be an inadvertent click that you don't realize you're clicking. I just don't know without seeing it in front of me. If you want to mail it to me, I mean, it's kind of expensive, but I'd be certainly more than happy to look at it for free and mail it back to you. But yeah, I'd have to see it on my desk. Like I said, if you could see it and show it to me, then you'd be able to fix it without my help. The fact that you can't see it is the very problem. So showing me what you can't see, and I can't emphasize that enough, we'll never be able to solve the problem that way. FM Lazar says an expert user might want that 6%. Well, but my channel isn't for expert users. I've already thought I've made that clear several times. There's plenty of channels for enthusiasts. Expert users don't come to my channel looking for information when they already know everything. This isn't for them. So why an expert user would be here would seem to me that they're lost, or they're hoping to change my channel into something they want it to be. But unless they're financing it, they're welcome here as a guest. But if the information is of no value to them, I would recommend they find a channel that's more aligned to their values. I'm here to promote the most common user, the one that is least thought of on YouTube videos, are your average users. There's not enough YouTube content for regular computer owners, in my opinion. And so long as that remains, then I'm going to continue making videos for average users. The expert users already know everything anyway. I have nothing to offer to them. Okay, just so we're clear. They have plenty of content to choose from already. Enthusiasts making videos for other enthusiasts are the vast majority of what YouTube tech channels are and who they're for. Channels that attract regular computer owners are few and far between. And I will fight to hold on to this position so as not to be converted into yet another of the sheep that are already out there repeating the same nonsense. I think it's nonsense because I don't run a business that way. So I wish there were more businesses doing what I was doing to show you what real work they do for real customers and at what real cost and what customers actually care about. Unfortunately, it's mostly all about enthusiasts dumping money into impractical solutions or just because it's fun. For my customers, it's usually not fun. It's usually about making money and helping their customers and trying to keep their businesses afloat, to keep their employees on payroll and make sure they don't have to lay anybody off so that they can continue to provide for their family and they can continue to help their clients. My dentist office isn't going to be much work, isn't going to help many people with toothaches and other oral dental issues when their systems are down. So it's no joke. And they don't want to install liquid coolers and RGB lighting in an operatory. So, a dentist office is going to order 14, 18 computers at a time. A home user is going to probably build it themselves or order one computer every 10 years. Can't run a business that way unless you've got thousands and thousands of customers. So, you can work harder or you can work smarter. But the bottom line is this channel is not for experts. This channel is for ordinary folks. And it's one of maybe a half dozen out of what might be 10,000 channels on YouTube that cater to enthusiasts. And again, I don't have a problem. Just feel it's off balance. And it's only showing you half the story. And it's alienating everybody else. So for everybody else, that's what we're here for. That's who we're trying to attract. Regular users. All right, I think I've got all the updates installed. Let me just take a quick look at my device manager and see if Windows Update did everything for us. Oh, it did. Fantastic. Okay. And then, of course, if we look under System, we can just verify it sees our chip, it sees our RAM. And by the way, I'm not doing anything different here than I did on the Asus board, but the Asus board will lock up every single time I try a Windows 11 install. And it doesn't matter which BIOS version I use, which RAM I use, which CPU I use, or which SSD I use. It's always the same. There's clearly something wrong with the Asus board. And the other Asus board keeps freezing on me. That's the Z790, and that one's going to be RMA'd because I'm past my 30-day return period back to Amazon or Newegg. And I don't have time for it. It really irritates me. And I'm very regretful that I ordered those Asus boards. But if we take a quick look here, we can run through some of the optimizations that I do, even though we're just about running out of time for today's broadcast. If we look at things like, the standard routine stuff that I put on my clients' machines. Just bring up my flash drive with my utilities on it here. And we'll install, we'll install VLC on here. A free open source and safe application for opening any media files. And then while that's doing that, we'll copy over the Microsoft PC Manager and Uncle Carrie's Windows 10 Optimizer, which does, of course, work in Windows 11. And then, because this has a Samsung 980 Pro drive, we'll load the Samsung Magician software while we're in here. Finish C install. And then as that loads, we'll go back to the testing directory, multitask through this. And we'll grab CPU Z, Cinebench, Crystal Disk Mark, HWI, copy those items, just drag them out. Desktop. And while that's happening, of course, we can finish installing the Samsung Magician. Samsung Magician used to be just like a license agreement. Now you've got to answer like 6 questions before the damn thing will install because of the whole GDD. This additional privacy notice that used to not be there. And then finally you get to the installation part, which used to be like 2 or 3 clicks, and now it's doubled at 6 clicks just to get the thing installed. But hey, it's fine. Once it's done, it's done. And then this software is not entirely necessary, but I like to have it just to keep tabs on the health of the drive and the status of the drive in regards to how much data the customer's written to it, what temperature it's running. It's not something I look at daily, but every 6 months, maybe we just take a look. Unless the customer is complaining about something, and just twice a year, you just take a look at it and make sure it all looks good. So we'll let that finish installing. And then it should recognize our drive as a brand new drive, which, I temporarily had in the Asus, so it's got a couple hours on it. But yeah, only 56 gigs have ever been written on it. It's running a nice, cool 42 degrees Celsius. So everything's happy there. And then we'll run Uncle Carrie's Windows 10 Optimizer here right quick. And we'll hit yes on that and apply. There we go. Now that's going to set the settings that I want, that I used to set by hand, only it does it way faster than I can. And then we reboot for those settings to take effect. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this machine, well, I still have the Microsoft PC Manager to install, and I will go through and remove some items in the add remove programs part, like Microsoft Office as a trial, Outlook as a trial. Take all those trials out. They're not really bloatware, they're just shortcuts. Bloatware is a thing PC manufacturers used to do years ago. Anybody talking about bloatware today is still living in 2010. So when they say, oh, here's how you can get Windows 11 to install without bloatware, what they really mean is it installs without shortcuts. These shortcuts take up very little space. They're not real trials. Things like Microsoft Office, you just right click on it, choose on install, and it's gone. Same with Spotify. You can uninstall that. It's just gone. It's just quick. It's just a little shortcut. Xbox, that's a little application, but it's a tiny one. It's not bloated. Bloated, I don't know if you know what bloated means, but this is not bloat. This is quite thin. And movies and TV, VLC replaces. That's why I don't want that. But I don't see why that's such a big deal to quote unquote de-bloat the computer. This is not bloat. These are minor, tiny little shortcuts. Who cares? They don't take up much room. They don't take up much space, and they're not taking up really any resources of any noticeable value. Back in the day when we had bloatware, you'd get like Norton or McAfee or, Zone Alarm pre-installed, and it would be consuming resources and slowing the computer down. It was something you didn't want, and sometimes when you took it off, it still left pieces of it behind that were never quite able to get off entirely without a complete wipe and reinstall. That stopped back in Windows 10 days. That's been gone a long, long time. So anybody still talking about Windows bloat is living in the past, or they don't seem to understand the difference between a shortcut and an application. And in either case, just so you know, when you're reading about people saying, you can install this without bloat, it never had bloat. These are shortcuts. Who cares? They take seconds to remove, and there's not very many of them. In fact, I think I've got them all done. I'll get rid of Xbox Live. So what? How many seconds? 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. Oh no, let me spend a half an hour going out of my way to install it in a way that I don't have to spend 4 seconds. Doesn't make any sense to me, man. I work at a bigger scale, and that just doesn't make sense. Now, with the Microsoft PC Manager, this is a free download. You can grab this from the Microsoft Store. I still use a beta of it because I prefer the beta, quite frankly, but it's very safe to use, and it helps keep your computer maintained using all of the built-in utilities that Windows 11 and Windows 10 come with. It just compiles them into one interface, one single pane of glass, as we call it. So you're not going to the control panel to visit this and go over there to do that. You simply have this PC Manager where everything is isolated here. You hit the boost button, clears out temporary files, set it to auto boost on its own, and you can set it, forget it, minimize it. You're done with it. If you want to additionally clean after a new install, you could type disk cleanup, and you can go through that. You can also go to storage settings, and under storage sense, we can tell it we want to clean up every month, and we can run it right now just to clear out any of the Windows Update files we just downloaded, which was a lot of them. And even though it says it's clean, there's always this other crap left behind that you've got to run disk cleanup. Now, if disk cleanup doesn't come up, it's because storage sense needs your computer to restart. So if you run disk cleanup and nothing happens, that's your sign you need to go to start and restart. So then it'll say finishing updates, and what it's really doing is it's finishing storage sense cleanup. Then when it reboots, you can start disk cleanup, clean up system files, and check every single box. And with all of that, 3 different cleanup applications, you see there's still nearly 2 gigs left to clean up, right? 1.5 gigs. And that's all your valuable SSD real estate being consumed by temp files that are just being left behind because Windows, like a small child, is not putting away its toys when it's done with them. You could buy a brand new computer built by anybody. I don't care if it's Dell or the shop down the street. And I can guarantee you, you're going to have gigs and gigs of temp files given to you on that machine with that space unavailable for you to use until you yourself clean it. That's how they sell them. Nobody I know that builds computers cleans them before they sell them. So just so you know, if you're building your own, that's one more step to get that space back. And then we're pretty much done. I will go to VIP CDK deals and I will buy a Windows 10 Pro key. It's about $16. I use the discount code CARRY and I plug in that Windows 10 Pro key. just as I would as if it were a Windows 11 Pro key, and Windows 11 Pro activates online and stays activated, tied to the motherboard for life. Pretty good deal. Product keys are guaranteed. They're 100% legit, and I stand behind them 100%, as I do the rest of my supporters here, which includes our friends at Acronis, which we'll be talking about on Sunday. As a reminder, it'll be not only Easter, but World Backup Day. We're going to talk about the importance and reminder of making those copies. Making copies. That's all backups are. We're just making copies of things you don't want to lose, putting them somewhere else. We're not moving the copies somewhere else. We're copying a duplicate of the important things so that they're in two places. In case something happens at place one, you can fall back to place two. And the other side of it's true. If something happens to the backup drive, you still have the originals, right? But the originals and the copies, as far as computers are concerned, contain the same ones and zeros. There's no degradation between an original and a copy, like in the old analog world of VHS tapes and Xerox machines, where every time you copied a copy, the image got worse. So we're using Acronis and maybe even like a NAS, like Synology. It can make the backup process easy and inexpensive. Sometimes people don't know how to back up, but we've followed that whole process with Megalodon here with Acronis that you can easily follow step by step. If you've missed it, please go back and watch that video. If you just follow along with us and you don't understand a word we're saying, you could be speaking an entirely different language, but just click on the things we click on in the order we click on them, you'll end up with a backup. How you restore it, don't worry about that. That's an easy problem to solve. The hard problem to solve is getting the backup made. Once the backup's made and put away, the restore, anybody can help you with a restore. But helping you with a restore when you've never made a backup is impossible. Your data's gone forever, unless you want to pay thousands of dollars to data recovery services with no guarantee of what, or if anything, they can get back. That's an expensive way to get a data backup, but it's your choice. Nobody thinks it's ever going to happen to them until it happens to them, and then they wish they would have done it. I don't know. You might be one of those people. Maybe you're somebody who's good on backups. Maybe you're somebody who said, you know, I've been meaning to get around to it. Maybe I should tune in this Sunday just to go through it. Make sure I have it done. Something you definitely want to have and don't need versus need and not have. But at the end of the day, it's your stuff and it only affects you. It has no impact on me or anybody else. So if you can't be bothered, then don't bother me. All right, just want to take one more look in the chat here. Oh, let me check the phone one last time as well. Just, I haven't been paying attention. I think. Raj D sent an Amazon gift card. He says Happy Easter with a $25 Amazon gift card. And NetFreak sent a $1 Amazon gift card. Thank you, guys. Of course, again, thank you to our friend Buster, who sent an Amazon gift card as well. Very generous, my friend. Thank you so, so much. You guys are what make this channel possible for me to buy this equipment. It ain't coming from YouTube revenues, that's for sure. It's coming from your memberships and your super chats. The more that we have available in the budget, the more we can show. And the smaller the budget gets, the content changes a little bit. It doesn't necessarily mean just because it's something less expensive that it's not as good of content. In fact, one of the cheap things I bought recently was give you a sneak peek, the world's smallest mouse. This is a relatively inexpensive product. But if you travel a lot and you just need something that you can pocket and carry around with you, look at how tiny this wireless mouse is. So you got your buttons, your scroll wheel, and your wireless USB receiver right there on the back magnetically. It plugs in to charge with a rechargeable battery built into it. And, you know, if it's something you need quick and out of the way while you're traveling, many people didn't even know something like this exists. And, you know, when the budget's low and we don't have a lot to spend, I'm trying to find creative ways to find inexpensive objects that might be more novelty, but they also might be problem solving for some people. But I think for most of you, you might chuckle at this and think it's quite impractical. Well, yes, to use this as your everyday mouse at your desk would be quite impractical. But if you were traveling and you needed to travel lightly, this would be a lifesaver because it actually works quite well. And it's not that uncomfortable unless you intend on sitting at the computer for hours and hours and hours, which I would argue, why are you traveling? You might as well have just stayed home. It comes in a little nice carrying case. And we're going to cover that along with some other fun little gadgets I've found that are just mostly for fun. But the difference is they're not expensive, right? Some people will buy a $10,000 thing because it's fun. Some people will buy an $80,000 Corvette because it's fun. I don't have that kind of money. So the things that I buy for fun have to be very inexpensive. And that is an example. So these gadgets that I'm finding, I can't wait to show them to you. And that's a video coming up. That's a result of just having reduced budget to work with, mainly because I spent most of the budget lately on these 4 builds. And I'm having to spend even more sending this Asus board back. And I'm also going to buy a different set of DDR5 RAM just in case. Maybe Asus doesn't like the OLOY RAM that every board I've ever used loves. Maybe that's the whole problem. So I've ordered some Team Group DDR5 that's non-RGB. And I've got another Asus board coming. And that Asus board I've got's got to go back. This is all more money just so I can do this series. The good news is we had no issues with the MSI. We had no issues with the ASRock. And we had no issues with the Gigabyte. Those boards are prepped and ready for the video where I'm going to show you where to look to change the voltage, although we kind of covered that a little bit here. We just haven't tested it. The main goal behind this video was to just give you an idea of what's going on. Like, why wasn't there a video on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday? Because I was doing that. That's all I was doing on top of helping my customers. And prepping these boards takes a long time. I need all 4 prepped, equally ready to go, activated, updated with all the drivers installed so that I can accurately show you the temperature range and the wattage and where in the BIOS you have to go uniquely to each motherboard manufacturer. And even when I show you that, it doesn't mean that's where you're going to need to go, because if you have a different model, even from the same manufacturer, it may be in a different place and it may be called something else. What a mess, right? But it should at least give you the gist of what I'm looking for, the gist of essentially where I'm looking to find it and how to identify it regardless of what they've called it, so that you are going to learn how to fish, not just be fed a fish. And you'll know that you won't need to ritualize the steps to click here and click there, that you'll use your eyes and your brain to figure it out. So that's what I want to show you how to do, is how to figure this out on your own, rather than give you the walkthrough and the cheat, because there isn't one. So a quick look here in the chat is before we go. Yes, if you enjoy the content, be sure and give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't. We keep everything real, unscripted, and live. There's no editing here. Everything you see is really what's happening. Products that we've unboxed, we have no idea what condition they're in, and very rarely do we ever see bad products. Thankfully, I didn't do the Asus live because I would just be spinning my wheels, trying everything just only to have it lock up no matter what I did. Saved you guys a lot of time wasted on that one. And again, if you guys have information that could help Richard Palmentier in trying to figure out why his PowerShell window immediately closes when he opens it, I'm sure he would appreciate any information that might lead to a solution. And of course, Richard, if you find the solution, please let me know. It's pretty unusual. Pretty unusual. But likely he's got something installed that's different, or something hooked up that's different than the rest of us. But he doesn't know what that is, so he can't tell us that. We have to see it, or one of you has to have this brilliant idea that just comes to you. But again, if you wanted to mail it in, I'd be happy to look at it. I'm sure if I had it in front of me, I'd see it. But just impossible to do that remotely. Let's see. Dell Alienware, still and still bloatware. I've got got two Dell XPS laptops and a Samsung Galaxy Book 3. And none of them have any bloatware. I have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe years ago. I don't know the last time you bought one. I've not seen any bloatware in years. But I'm not telling you you're wrong. I'm just telling you it's not been my experience, at least not on the laptops. Desktops, I don't know. I haven't seen an Alienware desktop in a while. Thank you again to our friends Acronis, RoboForm, Instant House Call, and of course VIP CDK Deals for helping to support us here to make the content and to offer the community a unique discount that's available for all of you. I think the Acronis discount will grow to 50% on Sunday because of World Backup Day. Instead of 30% off, I believe it'll be 50% off. So if you've been waiting for just a little bit of a sweeter deal, I hope you'll tune in on Sunday and join us on Easter for World Backup Day. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thanks to Maralina, of course, for the thumbnail. And actually, she didn't do today's thumbnail, but she'll probably change it now that I think about it. And all the other thumbnails and work she's got in the pipeline for what's coming up. There's a lot of stuff coming up. And I can't wait to share it all with you. Thanks to all of you for joining, all the members, all the regulars, all of the folks in blue and green, and everybody new. Right on. Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoy our community, and I hope you decide to stick around and be a part of it. We'd love to have you. That'll wrap it up for me for today. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Enjoy your weekend. A rare broadcast on Sunday, again, World Backup Day. I hope you'll join us for that. Until next time, bye for now. And I have to grab the right mouse to pick the intro. Running the mouse on the MSI ain't going to do it. Bye for now.